Breaking news. Amid an intensifying criminal probe, we have a development tonight. The Trump Organization's indicted CFO, Alan Weisselberg, now out from a major financial role. He's been effectively demoted through a resignation while Donald Trump scrambles with this ongoing and open criminal probe. Washington Post first to break the big story. This was late today, reporting that Weisselberg resigned from this key, pivotal trust, which controls all the company's assets. You can think of it as the org in Trump org. And it means that he gives up his place at the top of the company's formal hierarchy. That is how the Post described it, and their sources are clear. These are public government filings. Now, the trust has basically control of all the known Trump company investments. So it's the Trump org, it's the subsidiaries, it's everything that owns the Trump Organization. And this new departure from the trust is, experts say, clearly the most significant sign yet that he's giving up formal power at the company. He's worked there since the 70s, the Post reminds everyone. And Weisselberg is already out of leadership roles in the 54 different subsidiaries that he was a part of. So we knew about that. What's different today is losing the money role. Now, the documents show Weisselberg began this resignation flurry days before the public indictment. He was indicted for that alleged 15-year off-the-books tax scheme. He technically remains CFO of the company. These developments, though, suggest that he is not any more longer in charge of the company's money. That means that the CFO title either may go to match or may stay to be somewhat of a symbolic way to save face. But he's not on the trust where the big money decisions are made. Now, Weisselberg has also tapped defense lawyers who have no known ties to Donald Trump or the organization. He's funding these people himself and reportedly paying for it himself. Former prosecutors speaking to NBC News say that could be significant because it could suggest that he holds the option, even if he hasn't done it yet, the option to split away from Trump and have his own privately funded lawyers ready to make that call. We want to get into what this all means because it's certainly very interesting in terms of legal intrigue. And we're joined by former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade and Nick Ackerman, former Watergate prosecutor and Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District. Barbara, what is the significance of this kind of development?
Well, I think the resignations are not unusual in a situation like this. There are regulators and licensors and insurers that are likely to have lost confidence in not only Alan Weisselberg, but the Trump Organization. And so although in a court of law, someone is entitled to a presumption of innocence, the same really isn't true when you've got private decision makers in the business world. To the extent he has a fiduciary duty, there's concern that a grand jury has found probable cause to believe that he committed grand larceny and tax violations. There is also the concern that at the very least he'll be distracted from his duties by having to put together a legal defense. And then I suppose from a purely personal perspective, Donald Trump and others in his inner circle don't want to have to be looking over their shoulder every day to wonder whether Alan Weisselberg is wearing a wire when they participate in small meetings. And so I think this move is not a surprise in light of the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, Barbara, just to push on that a little, everything you said is how it should normally be done. But Donald Trump, in his legal skirmishes, however they've worked out, doesn't usually do it the normal way. I mean, I don't think anyone would take the bet that if Donald Trump were hypothetically indicted, that he would be walking away from any of these roles, right? Because he's known to be a fighter. So does it show that perhaps the normal way, the lawyers or the Weisselberg side are winning out more than, say, the Trump fight to the end side?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think he's all too willing to cut ties with Alan Weisselberg despite his many years of loyalty to the Trump Organization if it could any way diminish his ability to make money in the business world. And so I think concerns that they could lose liquor licenses or concerns that they could lose loans or lose insurance coverage, I think they're very quick to remove Alan Weisselberg from those roles to the extent that his participation or continued involvement could cause problems to the bottom line for the Trump Organization.
Nick?
Yeah, look, I think what you said before, these are formal resignations. I don't believe for a minute that he's still not running the show, that he's still not in charge. They put Don Jr. in charge in his place in a number of these companies. Don Jr. doesn't know the first thing about adding up books, accounting, knowing where all the money is. I mean, I think what they've really got themselves in here is pretty much a situation that I had when I was a prosecutor in the Southern District, where I prosecuted this guy, Matty Iannello, who was a capo in the Genovese family, who owned lots of restaurants and bars in New York. And he didn't disclose to the state liquor authority that he was the actual owners of these bars and restaurants. And as a result, I put together a case where he was convicted for mail fraud for lying to the state liquor authority. Here, I think you got the reverse. I think it's very likely that what's going on is that they basically have lied to all of these authorities and regulators by withdrawing his position in these companies. But I'll bet you dollars to donuts, if he's not going to the office every day, he's basically consulting with people every day in the Trump organization. And if the government, the federal government, could prove that, Mr. Weisselberg would be guilty of mail and wire fraud, just like Matty Iannello.
That's interesting because, again, this is why we like drawing on our experts and keeping an open mind. I mean, you're going a different direction in the way the Washington Post first looked at the story. I mean, everyone agrees on what the story is because it's not contested. They literally wrote down that he's out for these roles.
Right.
But, Nick, you're saying that while that could be read as a demotion, it certainly reads as a problem for the company because it's not great when your top person has to go out because they're under this cloud. You're raising the prospect that they might be playing fast and loose with, let me say it like this, fast and loose with the government mandates that require truth, which is, by the way, the very thing they're currently accused of as a company and him, that they played fast and loose with government mandates about the truth of compensation. Nick.
Absolutely. And if I were a prosecutor, that's exactly what I'd be looking at. I'd want to know if Weisselberg is still going to the office every day. I'd be looking at his phone records to see who he's talking to every day. I don't believe for a minute that they've got anybody who can take the place of this individual who has done this job since 1973. And to say that Don Jr., who is in a house down in Jupiter, Florida, suddenly has become a whiz accountant and a whiz bang at going through the books and records of the Trump organization has got to be a fairy tale. I don't believe it for a second.